Can be. House come to order. Will the members please take their seats? Welcome to our guests from the Senate and the Judiciary and other guests. And we'll be introducing folks here for the next 5 minutes and then turn the gavel over to Lieutenant Governor Sue Ellspermann to call our joint convention into session. First, it's my high honor and privilege to introduce my friend and the governor of the great state of Indiana, Governor Mike Pence. His Lieutenant Governor Sue Ellspermann. The leaders of the legislative caucuses, President pro tempore David Long, Minority Leader Senator Tim Lannon, and my colleague Minority Leader Scott Pelath. In our north balcony, we have a number of guests of the Chief Justice. Luke Rush, who I met today, the son of the Chief Justice. Luke. Half day off of school, stay off the phone. The Chief Justice's husband, Jim Rush. The sister of the Chief Justice, Helene Bishop. Jan Dixon, the wife of Justice Brent Dixon. Jan. Lawrence County Judge William Sleva. Lindsay Endress. Lindsay. The Lawrence County Prosecutor Michelle Woodward. Allen County Judge Francis Gull. Connie Lawson, our Secretary of State. Our Auditor, Suzanne Crouch. Our Attorney General, Greg Zeller. Treasurer of State Kelly Mitchell, the Director of the Department of Child Services, Mary Beth Bonaventura, the Superintendent of the Indiana State Police, Doug Carter, the Executive Director of Continuing Legal Education, Julia Orzeski, in our center main gallery, we have more than 60 trial court judges from around the state. Welcome to all of you. We have two former justices of the Supreme Court, former Chief Justice Randall Shepard, and former Justice Frank Sullivan, Jr. I don't recall our federal court judges joining us, but we welcome you and are very pleased to have Judge Sarah Evans Barker with us. Judge Jane Magnus Stinson. Judge Robin Moberly. And Judge Tanya Walton Pratt. Welcome to each of you. At this time, would the Chief Justice, the legislative escorts, and the judges of the Indiana Appellate Court please come forward? Chief Justice is being escorted by Senator Brett Steele, Senator Rod Bray, Senator John Broden, Senator Karen Talion, Representative Kathy Richardson, Representative Cindy Kirkoffer, Representative Donna Harris, and Representative Philip Giaquina. The Chief Justice is joined by her Supreme Court colleagues, Justice Brent Dixon, Justice Robert Rucker, and Justice Mark Massa. In Court of Appeals, Judges Nancy Vadic, John Baker, Edward Najam, Patricia Riley, James Kirsch, L. Mark Bailey, Melissa May, Michael Barnes, Terry Crone, Cale Bradford, Elaine Brown, Rudolph Pyle III, Robert Altice, and Tax Court Judge Martha Blood Wentworth. Be aware. I about bought it. My colleagues, please come to order. Judges never outwalk the applause. It's my high honor to introduce the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Indiana, Lieutenant Governor Sue Ellspermann.
Would the assembly please be seated? Members of the Joint Assembly, pursuant to Section 3 of Article 7 of the Constitution of the State of Indiana, this joint session of the two houses of the Indiana General Assembly is now convened for the purpose of hearing a message from the Chief Justice of Indiana. It is my privilege to present to you the distinguished Chief Justice of Indiana, the Honorable Loretta Rush.
Governor Pence, Lieutenant Governor Ellspermann, members of the General Assembly, my judicial colleagues and guests, it's great to be here this afternoon. 200 years ago, a handful of frontiersmen turned statesmen crafted the first Indiana Constitution. This governing document was powerful in its simplicity and clear in its mandate, that justice be accomplished speedily and without delay. Our forefathers understood that justice delayed meant justice denied, and they held that belief so dear that they made prompt access to the courts a basic right for all Hoosiers. Timely justice is not just a good idea or a noble aspiration. In Indiana, it's a constitutional promise. At that same time, the original three-judge Indiana Supreme Court first met in the court in State House in a courtroom that seated about 20. Their docket included a stolen horse purchased at a sheriff's sale, a squatter on land not yet purchased from the United States, and an indictment for, I'm going to quote this here, unlawfully betting on a game of cards called Lou at Craig's Tavern in Brownstown. Our court's responsibilities evolved over the next 200 years to increase an array of increasingly complex criminal, civil, family, and juvenile matters. But even more significantly, Hoosiers are seeking the court's assistance to resolve many social issues as well. In particular, we have become the emergency rooms of some of society's worst afflictions, such as substance abuse, family violence, and mental illness. Our trial court judges are on the front lines of those issues every day. They are called to carry out our constitutional mission of protecting individual rights and liberties, upholding and interpreting the rules of law, and providing fair hearings without delay in every single case that comes before them every single day. Last year alone, that meant 1,350,909 cases. Trial court judges, please stand so we can show our appreciation. As we stand at the threshold of our third century of statehood, our Hoosier courts will be called on to be more nimble, more affordable, more accessible, more tech-savvy, and more user-friendly. Nothing less will do. Before we look at new reforms and challenges, I'd like to briefly update you on 3 initiatives from last year. First, commercial courts. As Kevin Breniger of the Indiana Chamber of Commerce stated, businesses locate in states that resolve disputes consistently and reliably. Establishing commercial courts promotes confidence and predictability and keeps Indiana business environment competitive. Last year, we laid the groundwork to make the possibility of commercial courts in Indiana a reality. This year, our first 6 commercial courts will start hearing cases. Please join me in thanking Mr. Breniger, Representative Tom Washburn, Professor Frank Sullivan, and the entire hard-working committee of lawyers, legislators, academics, businesses, and judges who made this vision a reality for our state. Thank you. Second, court technology. Because of your budget support this past session, 2015 was a banner year for court technology. We are modernizing our courts to meet the charge of timely justice through the wise use of technology. We are continuing to integrate trial courts into a unified case management system, and already we've implemented the first electronic filing programs in Hamilton County and all appellate courts. Next week, Clark County begins e-filing, soon followed by Harrison, Henry, St. Joseph, Wells, and Shelby counties. This intentional expansion will continue throughout the state, allowing the courts, the litigants, their attorneys, and the public quick, easy, and accurate access to the courts. In just the first 6 months, nearly 12,000 documents were filed electronically. When fully implemented, tens of millions of pieces of paper will be no more. Third, criminal code reform. The creation of the 9-member Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council, consisting of criminal justice and mental health policymakers, has made your vision of criminal code a reality. Johnson County Judge Cynthia Emke says that this new emphasis on collaboration brought major stakeholders in her community together for the first time. This team approach let Johnson County reassess how to allocate limited resources so they can better protect the public while offering better services for offenders. The funding you've provided is already making a difference. 43 counties have added 84 new community corrections and probation officers. Your wisdom in is also allowing for long-needed expansion of problem-solving courts and offender supervision programs. My judicial colleagues and I applaud your courage on taking on this reform for our state. Thank you. In addition to the progress we've made on the 3 initiatives announced last year, your judiciary has ventured forward on many other fronts to involve and improve the daily life for all Hoosiers. 3 ongoing efforts that I'll highlight this afternoon concern our children and families, problem-solving courts, and information sharing. Central to any society is the health and welfare of its families and children. The role of Indiana courts has been evolving since 1903, when we became the 2nd state in the nation to create juvenile courts. Our Indiana families face no shortage of challenges, but by working together, we are addressing these challenges with common sense solutions. DCS Director Mary Beth Bonaventura will tell you that our state last year experienced a 30% increase in the number of children entering the welfare system, primarily because of parental substance abuse. Timely justice for Indiana's most vulnerable children requires great attention from many entities, including having their own advocates in the courtroom. Court-appointed special advocate, or CASAs, are that child's voice. Even with over 350,000 hours from these volunteers on behalf of over 18,600 children, we still have over 5,000 children today without a CASA. Last session, you provided increased support for us to tackle this pressing demand, and we continue our work to expand this critical volunteer program. Thank you. Nearly a quarter of our children in Indiana live in poverty, and a third live in single-family households, single-parent households. Hoosier families depend on our court to set workable and fair child support guidelines and to enforce child support orders. It's critical to those families' economic security. Indiana collected and distributed over $500 million in child support last year. Howard County's Judge Lynn Murray and her team of 14 judges were assigned the daunting task of updating the child support guidelines. They brought in experts and received extensive public input. And the result is one of the most comprehensive plans in the nation. In this instance, the guarantee of timely justice translates into a parent being able to pay rent or buy food for their child now and not 2 years from now. We are proud to be the only state in the country that enjoys a juvenile detention alternatives partnership involving all 3 branches of government. This program proves that enhancing public safety, saving taxpayer dollars, and improving outcomes for youth are not at odds. With your support, we have rapidly expanded this remarkable program, resulting in fewer children being incarcerated, lower recidivism rates, and fewer minors standing trial in the adult system. I'm sure you'll be pleased to know that the estimated savings to the Department of Corrections from this and other juvenile reforms has steadily grown to over $15 million annually. For the 4th consecutive year, the Supreme Court opened trial courts across the state to news cameras to mark National Adoption Day in November. On that day, 135 children in 44 courts went home with a forever family. Our goal in opening these trial courts is twofold: to raise awareness of the importance of adoption and of our state's ongoing need for loving families for children in foster care. Indiana's juvenile courts were the first problem-solving courts long before anyone coined that term. And we still are a pioneer in problem-solving courts. They are one of our judiciary's greatest success stories. Participants in these veteran, drug, mental health, family violence, or reentry courts take part in intensive treatment under court supervision. These courts are particularly vital to honoring our constitutional promise of reformative justice. You'll remember Specialist Bunch, who had just graduated from a problem-solving court himself last year when I addressed you. I'm happy to report he's doing well. Christopher and his wife just closed on their first house, and he asked me to deliver this message to you. If it wasn't for Judge Maria Granger and Veterans Court, this all would not have been possible. Thank you, Judge Granger. We held an inaugural Veterans Court Summit at the Indiana War Memorial this past summer, bringing together veterans groups, judges, and prosecutors. At the summit, I was particularly touched by Judge Jonathan Cleary of Dearborn County, who described his appreciation for veterans courts by saying, if there's a court in heaven, he hopes it's a veterans court. Based on success like that, it's not surprising you asked us to expand veterans courts, and we have. 19 new or expanded veterans courts will bring us to a total of 79 problem-solving courts statewide. Indiana has more veterans per capita than most states. Our pledge to you is that we will not be satisfied until all qualified veterans have access to these courts in Indiana. This past year, my Supreme Court colleagues and I traveled the state to hear from our trial court judges from all 92 counties. They shared with us what would become a reoccurring theme, the drug crisis, particularly heroin and methamphetamine, crippling their communities and flooding their courts. Wayne County Judge Dave Colger told us that in his 20 years as a prosecutor, he handled a total of 20 heroin cases. Today, as judge, he has heroin cases in his court daily. Fayette County Judge Paul Freed lamented that in his county of 23,000, he had 30 heroin overdoses in 30 days. Lawrence County Judge William Sleva shared with me the story of 28-year-old Lindsay Endress. What started as a prescription to pain led to an addiction to heroin. As a result, Lindsay was arrested and lost her job as a first-grade teacher, lost custody of her children, and lost her home. At that time, she said, my reputation was gone. I was an A student, I was an overachiever, I was heartbroken at the gravity of what I had done. But things changed when Lindsay was admitted to drug court. She says, drug court made me accountable. I had structure. This just wasn't about getting sober. It was about coming to grips with what caused me to use. On October 29th, 2015, Lindsay graduated from the Lawrence County Drug Court. Senator Brent Steele and Representative Washburn were in attendance to celebrate with Lindsay. Many of you have attended other problem-solving court graduations, and you know how powerful they are. At her graduation, Lindsay said, I stand before you today, proof that addiction can happen to anyone regardless of a person's upbringing, economic status, or values instilled when growing up. I am also proof that despite how addiction can destroy your life, working a program such as drug court can and will restore your crumbling life. Today, Lindsay is back caring for her children, working as an office manager, and paying off her student loans and other debts. She is even organizing a drug recovery program through her church. Lindsay told me, I am now building up my reputation. I'm building it back up in a different way by helping people. Lindsay, yes you are. Please welcome Lindsay, her judge, William Sleva, her prosecutor, Michelle Woodward, along with her entire drug court team. have our drug court team in the back row up there. I'll stand up. I've got the Lawrence County Drug Court team here. Thank you. You're all part of her success. We are replicating this drug court model in other parts of the state where courageous leaders are signing on to a program that is about rehabilitation, not punishment. We cannot afford to incarcerate or institutionalize our way out of this drug crisis. Our approach must include helping sons and daughters, husbands and wives return to a life after addiction. There are no easy answers to this crisis, but your courts stand ready to help communities bring back productivity to those who have lost their way. All of the successful programs we've talked about today have two things in common: hardworking Hoosiers and access to reliable information. In this century, timely justice and sound decision-making demand instant access to accurate information. Judges need reliable information, and we know that you do too. Court information, such as offender demographics, is not used by the judiciary alone. We share it with other local, state, and federal partners to aid you in your policy-making decisions. Current examples include the Governor's Management Performance Hub, which is using court data to study recidivism. The Legislative Service Agency is using the data to consider felony and misdemeanor convictions for fiscal impact. The Indiana Department of Health and the CDC are compiling information from court records to build a more complete picture of the state's high rate of suicide. The court's main data sharing program called Insight has 30 applications. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell you about all 30 of them, but I do want to share with you a few examples of how they work and how we're using them. When Hendricks County Judge Robert Frazee sends a felon, he can be assured that the inmate's DNA has been processed by the state police and in turn shared with the other states and the FBI. When Cass County Judge Rick Moffmer enters a protective order, the victim gets a text message when that order has been served on the offender. When Clark County Judge Vicki Carmichael has a defendant before her, she can immediately verify whether there is an outstanding warrant from another court. When Henry County Judge Mary Willis needs to know if a child has appeared before another judge in another county, she has that vital information at her fingertips. When Allen County Judge Fran Gull impanels a jury, she can be sure it is the most inclusive and diverse possible because she uses a jury list available through the Insight application. And we're all glad that she has access to that master list because that same Judge Gull just received a national award for her effort to make jury service more efficient and user-friendly. Congratulations, Judge Gull. Could you stand? In all these instances, court data is key to the efforts of all three branches of government. We will continue to collect and share court information to help policymakers at all levels in their respective efforts towards building safer and healthier communities in our state. As we consider our constitutional message set 200 years ago, we must also focus on where we go next. And I'm reminded when I first became a trial court judge. Chief Justice Randall Shepard at that time encouraged us trial court judges to get out from behind the bench and work within our communities. He promoted court outreach programs designed to improve civic engagement, a tradition we continue today. In this past year alone, dozens of trial and appellate court judges walked out of the courtroom and into the classroom on Constitution Day to teach thousands of students about our founding document. The Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals hit the road and heard oral arguments across the state, reaching thousands of students. Many of you joined us in these real-world civic lessons, where the students' insightful questions demonstrated great hope for improved civic engagement. Appellate and trial courts reached thousands more students through local schools, the Capitol Tour Office, programming at the State Fair and Statehood Day. Perhaps something as simple as trying on a robe or sitting on a judge's bench for a picture is what will inspire and energize the next generation to become meaningfully engaged in their home communities. The bicentennial year offers a wide range of opportunities for a deeper level of civic engagement and celebration. In April, our court will hear a modern case in a historic setting. The case we'll hear is not likely to be about a stolen horse or a squatter or playing loo at the local tavern, but we will hear a case in our original home court in Corydon. We are working with the Department of Education to webcast the argument to classrooms across the state, again, using partnerships and technology to promote our court's mission. In 2 centuries of statehood, only a handful of justices have served this court more than 25 years. As we revisit our origins and return to our state's first courtroom in April, what better time or more fitting place to honor the second longest serving justice in state history, Justice Brent Dixon. You're going to get to hear more about him. He's retiring this year after 30 years in the Indiana Supreme Court, having also served as Chief Justice. During his historic tenure, Justice Dixon has been instrumental in refining Indiana law. With nearly 900 opinions, his body of work reflects the many ways courts are called to bring clarity and certainty to nearly every facet of the law. His majority opinions range from property rights to property tax, from auto insurance to tort law, and a broad gamut in between. And Justice Dixon has helped give form and substance to our state's unique constitutional guarantees of equal privileges and immunities, voting rights, criminal law protections against double jeopardy, and recently public education, school vouchers, and strict separation of powers. Justice Dixon has shaped the heart of Indiana law for years to come through careful opinions, keen insight, intelligence, unswerving ethics, tireless work, and dedication to the rule of law. He has further led administrative reforms, including dispute resolution through mediation, pretrial release, and promoting volunteer legal services for the poor. Hearing his final argument in the courtroom befits a man who has spent his career upholding the framers' Constitution. Our state owes its thanks to Justice Dixon and his wife, Jan, as founder of the Judicial Family Institute, a leader in her own right. Justice and Jan Dixon, please stand for our deepest appreciation. Two 2016 promises to be a year of progress on many fronts, including the few I've touched on today. We will also be working hard to improve access to the courts for unrepresented litigants, to better meet the needs of non-English speaking litigants, and to reorganize our administrative structures to prove more efficient and effective services to Hoosiers seeking justice. Our courts are neither perfect nor infallible, but each day we must reach for that goal of perfection, because our mission is critical to a free society and to the Constitution which blessed the birth of our state 200 years ago. Our predecessors, those frontier statesmen, toiled to build a state served by a timely, effective justice system. Let's do our part, continuing to work together to preserve safe communities, a thriving economy, and the integrity of our Hoosier courts. Thank you, and may God richly bless this state that we so love. Thank you.
This joint session is now adjourned.
House will stand in recess till the fall of the gavel, till our colleagues exit, about 10 minutes.